is right across the Hudson River, Jersey City. That city is across the Hudson River from New York City. So when the Twin Towers fell in the World Trade Center, we were maybe 1.5 miles away from there, and we could smell the fire that was coming. Okay, so that's how close we are. We're neighbors with New York City. And my university used to be a college for teachers, and then it became a broader college. So it has many departments, and it now has also 2 doctoral programs. Okay, so today, with my co-author, who is right here, Georgi Durman, we are going to talk to you about the language of land grabs. This is a linguistic and a lexicographic topic. And the first time I presented it, it was recently in June in Vancouver, Canada, at a conference. And I must say that my first trip to Georgia was in 2013. And I really owe Georgia for the idea for this work. Because when I was in Georgia, I met as many people as I could 2 years ago, and I tried to talk to them about politics. Why? Because usually in the United States, people don't like politics. So I have nobody to talk politics to except Russian immigrants who I know, who also like to talk about politics. So I wanted to really hear from Georgian people, their views, their opinions, and they were very happy to talk to me about these things. And we talked a lot about what happened in Georgia in 2008. And many of those Georgians said to us, today it was Georgia, or 2008 it was Georgia, in the future it will be Ukraine, or in the future it will be somewhere else. And we agreed with their fear and their concern. We agreed with this. And of course, as we know, they were right. Unfortunately for everybody, they were right. And then we were reading the Russian press, and we were noticing certain language in the Russian press as they tried to justify what was happening in Crimea and what was happening in the Ukraine. So we started to pay attention to the words that we were seeing, and that is what you will be seeing today. Since my area is, of course, linguistics, but also lexicography, dictionary making, I wanted to think about these new words as someone who thinks about dictionaries also. So I wanted to think, well, if a lexicographer wanted to put one of these words in a dictionary, how would they do it? Where would they find the examples and the contexts? You could not go to a corpus. I know that here at Ilia University, they are working on a corpus of the Georgian language. That is the normal tool. It is a very important tool that a dictionary maker usually would use to create a dictionary. But with brand new words, even a corpus usually will not have that in it. So you have to go out to written texts on the internet, in the press, and other places. And that's what we did, including places like Twitter. Twitter is not a great place for a dictionary maker. Can you guess why? Twitter would not be the perfect location for a dictionary maker to try to find a text. What about Twitter is special that would not be good for a dictionary? Any ideas? How long are Twitter texts? What is the length of a Twitter? very short, 140 characters. So that will be a sentence, maybe a sentence and a half. And if the context is too small, usually there will not be enough information for the person making the dictionary. But because these words are so new, that is one of the things that we used in the dictionary. Not dictionary, but in creating, in looking at and examining and analyzing these different words. I'm going to start here with something not related to Ukraine and Crimea, and something from the past. Because as we investigated this topic, we understood that it is really part of a broader issue. So this is not just about language used about Crimea and Ukraine. It is about language used whenever there is social disturbance. Whenever there is upheaval in the society. It could be caused by war. It could be caused by change in government. It could be caused by many things. But we understood that language in times of social stress changes faster. So we wanted to go back to a very famous lexicographer. He is known to linguists as a phonologist, phonolog, and he revised a dictionary in Russia, the one you see in front of you, and his revision got him into a lot of trouble. And he got into trouble exactly because he tried to include new words associated with the revolution of 1905 in Russia. Okay? And after he got into trouble, he tried to explain why he included certain words in the dictionary. Why did he do this? Because people were very angry. Some of the reviewers of the dictionary in the newspaper and so on were very unhappy that he included these political words in the dictionary. And so this is what he said, that the words came about and were created during times of political disturbance and change in the worldview of all classes of society. And this is, I think, a very interesting statement he made here. If in normal times meaning changes constantly, it is all the more necessary for more significant change to take place in revolutionary and anarchic times, times of chaos. That's what happens. And he noted this next statement is very important. He said that the same word can sometimes have completely opposite meaning. For one person it means this, for another person the same word means something completely different. And you will see that today. And they provoke different emotions. I think that's an important statement as well, that a word creates emotions. And because a dictionary wants to be complete, even these words that cause very strong emotions should be included. Now we are moving to 21st century, to Russia, Crimea, and Ukraine, and this is a linguist in Ukraine who is saying that in 50 years of peaceful existence between Ukraine and Russia, language did not change very much, and it changed less than during only 1 year of war. She goes on to say that she is labeling this intense change in the language as a linguistic jerk that causes an avalanche-like process of word formation. Here you see some of the words. Only the first one you see there, krymnash, is one that we will deal with. I like this also. Let's consider in the life of language there are peaceful periods and warlike periods. During the warlike periods, there is a the lexicon. And she calls this a wartime linguistic swerve. I don't like the word war here because sometimes I think it could happen when there is not a war. It could happen when there is social disturbance, upheaval, some kind of revolution. It does not necessarily have to be war, I think. Now, here she is talking about the 3 different levels in the language where this language change is taking place. And you can see it here. So she says it takes place in everyday experience. When I talk to you or to you, just our everyday talking to one another, in the media space. So here we go to Twitter, Facebook, all of the online newspapers and journals and magazines and blogs, everything in the media space. And finally, the highest level of language, the standard language, probably what more formal newspapers would write, what would be written in more formal texts, in books, and so on. Okay, she says the border between these levels are open, and there is a free fermentation of words and ideas. Notice she gives this free exchange a directionality. So she says it starts in the everyday lexicon. From the lexicon, concepts migrate to the world of tweets and retweets, posts and reposts in social media, and from there into official linguistic space. As you will see during this presentation, it's not quite that pretty and simple. So actually, the highest level can affect the other two levels, the middle level can affect the higher level, or can affect the way people speak. So if something is planted in Facebook and Twitter and other places in the media, it can make its way into everyday conversation. Not everything is going to start down in everyday conversation. Do you have any questions so far? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Would you like to ask me anything? Okay. So I'm going to begin with the word of the year in Russia in 2014, Krim Nash. And notice they're combining 2 elements, Krim and Nash, and they're saying, aren't we great? The Crimea belongs to us. And obviously you can see that this word is, the people who use this expression are using it in a positive way, with a positive connotation. That's how a lexicographer would describe it, a dictionary maker. And also it formed another noun from that first one, Krimnashist. And notice here, it's a little different. It's negative. So the people who do not support Putin, the people who do not support the takeover of the Crimea, they would say, those people over there who support it, they're almost like a fascist. So we're going to portray them with this negative word, negatively connotated word, Krimnashist. And here's a context. Russians are afraid to go abroad, but at least the Crimea is ours. What does that tell us as dictionary makers? So when I first looked at this, I thought that it was someone who was expressing pride. The Crimea is ours. Russians cannot go abroad anymore, they're afraid, but at least, yay, we have the Crimea. Then I started to think maybe the person is being very ironic. That's what you think also. Yeah. So maybe the person is saying, oh, some people think we did such a great thing, but what fools we are. Now we cannot even go abroad. So this is the problem with the short context. We don't really know what the meaning is here, how the person meant us to understand this utterance. We would have to read this person on Twitter for a month until we had an understanding of who the person was, and then maybe we would understand how she meant to say this comment. Okay, so now the people who really did oppose the takeover of the Crimea, and there are some people like that in Russia, even if they are a minority of people. Notice here that they created a new word, nam krish. So you can look at this. It's a combination of to us and it's over. Okay? So we got the Crimea, Krim nash, and so now nam krish. We're going to be in a very bad situation. So this is obviously people who do not support what happened in the Crimea. And here's a context, again, a short context, and you see it right here. This person is saying it's really true. We're not going to be in a good situation. And then, of course, nam krish starts to be used alone. Apparently, it was used first along with krim nash together. So krim nash, ili nam krish. The two were used together, and then it started to take on an independent life of its own. So we see that here. Notice that the spelling of Putin's name and the spelling of the word help, both in the Russian and also in my translation, are misspelled. So the writer here was obviously trying to portray the words of an uneducated person. I'm sure it was conscious. I suspect the person knew very well how to spell the words and was again being ironic here. So notice what they're saying. They're saying nam krish is not really true. Those people who are against Putin think things are going to go bad for us, but that's silly. In reality, everything is going to be fine in the Crimea. I think that's what this context is trying to say. So he's answering, he's really in a dialogue with the people who are against Putin and saying, you people are ridiculous. What you're saying is not true. This is the second word I'd like to look at, and this is a pretty crazy word right here. So I'm not sure if you know of this man, his name was Stepan Bandera, correct? Okay, so some you are aware. I didn't know about Stepan Bandera, a Ukrainian nationalist during World War II. And in the new movement in Russia, with all these creations of brand new words, they're very often reaching back to World War II to create their words. So they're grabbing something that came from World War II and using it in a new way. We already saw fascist, how they're using Krim nashist. So they're taking the word fascist from World War II and combining it to make something new. So this word Zhidobanderovets, that is a word, as you see, for Jews who are supporting the Ukrainians against the Russians. And apparently this word started at the time of Maidan. From all indications, and sometimes even though these words are brand new, it can be amazingly difficult to figure out when they exactly started. Okay, so this word apparently came from Maidan, right from the square in Kiev. Well, before I go to that slide, I will say that obviously this word was used in a very negative way to describe Jews who were supporting the Ukrainians, and sometimes it was used for all the Ukrainians who were in favor of independence, okay? And it was a very negative word, extremely negative. And what happened very quickly was what linguists would call reappropriation. So this is when you have an extremely negative word applied to a certain group of people, and those people take the word back and say, okay, we're going to call ourselves this. You think you can insult us by calling us a negative word? You're wrong. We're going to call ourselves this word, and we're going to make it into a positive. So this goes directly to what Baudouin de Courtenay in one of your first slides was saying, that one and the same word can have two opposite meanings. And this is exactly what happened here, and with a few of the other words in Russia today that are being used this way. So notice, not only did they take back the word, and you see it written here in Ukrainian language, they also have a lot of very funny pictures on the internet with Orthodox-looking people, like the people you see here, religious people, Jews, carrying guns, okay? So they're defending Ukraine. So they made it really into a humorous thing, and they applied it to themselves, and there are many pictures like this. You can also buy a mug to drink your coffee, or you could buy a button to put on yourself, or even a baseball cap. You can buy that. So you see what they have done here. They have taken the word for themselves. A good example from American English is what is probably one of the most offensive words in English. Do you have any idea what that word would be? No? And truly, you might think it's the F word, as we call it. But it's actually the N word, which is much, much more offensive than the F word, and that is the word nigger. Okay, to call a black person by that. And that word has been taken back also, reappropriated by African Americans, who will call it to each other. So I cannot use this word. It would be offensive if I were to use this word, but when they are together, they use it for each other as a way of indicating their solidarity with one another and their unity with one another. This word was so reappropriated and so quickly used by the group of people to in a positive manner that it became almost impossible very quickly to find negative contexts where it was really being used in a negative manner. And this one, I suspect, is one where the writer really intended the word to be negative. And notice also he's associating this group of people with oligarchs. So he's implying that they have the money and they're supporting Ukrainian independence, and the idea, of course, being that there wouldn't be a Ukrainian independence movement unless these people, so-called Zhidobanderovцы, interfered in this by supporting the movement financially. So that's the idea here. Now, I have been told that you have this word Kolorat or Koloradi in Georgian, and that you know what these are in Georgian. Could someone inform me or let me know about this? Do you have something like this? Do you know about this bug, this insect?
We do know about the insect, but nothing kind of metaphoric meaning.
Okay, of course, but you do know about the insect. Okay, Georgy Dorman used to be a citizen of Russia 34 years ago, and when he was a school child and he took a notebook to school, on that notebook was a big picture of a kolorat, okay, a potato beetle. And the idea that everyone in Russia heard about in those days, which would have been what, the 1950s? Okay, the early 1950s in Russia, the idea was that the American CIA had dropped from a plane with parachutes all of these insects so that they could destroy the Russian potato crop. That was the propaganda that was being spread in the Soviet Union. So, by coincidence, this beetle, this insect, looks like the ribbon of St. George. And this is something that is a symbol of pride in Russia and is often even awarded to people as a medal. All right, so because of that similarity in the color and in the stripes, the people who were pro-Russian started to be called Koloradi by the Ukrainians. And also those people very often were actually wearing this ribbon when they were going to fight in East Ukraine. So obviously it started out used by the Ukrainians very negatively, and probably also used by Russians who did not like what was happening, who were against what Putin was doing in East Ukraine. So they called these people Koloradi, okay? And reappropriation started to take place again. Not as extensive and as complete as with Žida Banderovets. That reappropriation was really complete, and today the word is used mostly by those people in a positive way about themselves. Here, this is a positive usage of Koloradi. So they are saying that we are Koloradi and we are going to get Poroshenko, the leader of Ukraine. So they're reappropriating the term and using it positively about themselves. I really like this one. I think it's very funny, this context.
In English translation, actually, one connotation was lost because they will plant him in the spring. Посадят in Russian also means they will imprison him in the spring. So when in Russian you посадят in prison. Посадят
в тюрьму.
Yeah, I agree, and that's why I didn't say. Did I say plant there?
Yes.
Yeah.
I did say plant, and I should have probably said stow him away or something like that. I should probably, or parentheses.
Because it has
you're right.
Connotation.
Yes, of course, and you're right. That word has the real planting, and most people actually, I think, would more understand it as having to do with going to prison. I agree with that, so I'm going to have to make a change. Thank you for that. Or add some kind of explanation for that very important connotation for the expression. Now here, this is clearly someone who doesn't like the Koloradi and who is using the word in a very negative way. The meaning of Kolorad is spreading, and the use of the word in this exact way is spreading to other languages. So what you're seeing here is a store, a shopping center, a grocery store, or a supermarket in, I believe it's Latvia, it could be Estonia or Lithuania, one of the three Baltic states. And notice what they have done here. They have created a sticker that has the image of the bug on it, image of the Colorado insect. And they are putting it on anything in their supermarket that came from Russia. So they are trying to get everyone to boycott all of the Russian products in the stores as a kind of protest against what is happening in East Ukraine. So notice how the meaning, if we're looking at a dictionary, we're noticing that the meaning is becoming broader and broader. Or another way to look at it would be that it has one sense, two senses, now it has three different meanings for this word. The first one is the most direct, the insect, the Colorado beetle. The second one is a fighter who is in the East Ukraine. and now anything having to do with Russia, and really all with a negative connotation, all inspiring negative kind of emotions. This is a very interesting word, and it was used well before the events in the Ukraine and in Crimea, but I still group it with what is happening now because it really is part of the whole dynamic of the country of Russia positioning itself as opposing certain values from the West, from Europe and the United States, mostly. And this word has actually been used for quite a while, at least 2 years, probably more. And even there is a book title now that has this gay ropa in the title. And we can say that it is almost moving into the standard language. It has been used so much that it is actually moving up into the standard language. It's appearing in print, not only in newspapers and on the internet, but also in books. Okay, and as you can see, the word is really signifying that Europe represents some kind of moral corruption, and that Russia represents a cleaner, purer view of the world and way of living than Europe does. So that's what this word is trying to express. Here's a pretty good context. It's a little bit longer than some of the others you have seen, and it pretty much portrays exactly how this word gayropa is used. Were you aware of this word? Had you heard about this before?
Yes.
Yes. This word is one that has not been reappropriated. It is consistently used in a negative manner, as far as I know, except possibly when people with great irony talk about themselves that way. But mostly it is an extremely negative term. And it's very important because it's also one of those words that if you are labeled with it now in Russia, you will be punished. So this word has very serious implications for someone who ends up being called by this word. Notice I've given you a context from the New Yorker magazine. This is an American magazine. Referring to a speech that Putin made. Now remember when we looked at that 3 levels of language, standard language, common speech, and then the media language in the middle. And the author from the Kiev University was saying that there was this directionality where words start in the oral language, move to media, and up to standard language. This is an example of a word that started really at the top, apparently with Putin himself. It had been used before national traders, but not for the present day context. It's a historical term. So Putin used it in a speech. Immediately after he did so, it started to be used throughout the Russian media. Putin has a lot of people working for him to post on Twitter and to post on Facebook. So it started to be used in those kinds of media as well. So the word spread from Putin himself down into the media, and I'm assuming also into the speech of more average people. This is an example of someone who was punished for being labeled a national traitor. So this is a famous rock musician in Russia. His name is Makarevich, and he had a group at one time, I don't know today, called Mashina Vremeni, Time Machine, and he still performs today. And he had been performing throughout Russia as well as in Ukraine. And when the events of Ukraine started, he said, I'm not going to stop. I'm going to continue performing. And he's also been outspoken at various points against Putin's policies. So now by someone in the media who is a more right-leaning, Putin-favoring person, this Prokhanov, he wrote this about Makarevich, at which point his engagements in Russia started to be canceled, and it became very difficult for him to play his music in Russia. He could play it in the Ukraine, but he could not play it in Russia. Here's another context, pretty good one, that really shows the negative connotation associated with this word. So I'm going to return to our linguist from Kyiv University and those three levels, just to point out that a word can travel in many directions, a new word, as it takes hold in the language. And by the way, we don't know for sure that these words have taken hold. We don't know how long they will last in the language. But my view is, in today's lexicography, we are not creating a printed book where we are limited by space. So we have online lexicography, digital lexicography. So we have as much space as we need, and I think it would be a shame if we did not document all words, especially such interesting words from such an interesting time. And that's it.